What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Bull Season 6, Episode 13, The Hard Right. So this one was ultimately better than the last two, but to be perfectly honest, the last two were so poorly written, it's kind of hard not to be better than that. It's one of those, you were at the bottom of the barrel, and now all of a sudden we're somewhere just below middle of the barrel, so yes, it's better. I'm more excited to see this episode, but not by much, and there's still a lot of flaws, a lot of issues with this episode. So starting with the main story, everything to do with this Bly guy and Bly guy, it's kind of funny, but everything to do with him and his story and what happened to his friend, it was fine. It was nice emotional beats at the end of the story, everything that happened, you feel bad for him, and it's something that soldiers with PTSD after war is something that is emotional, and it's something that even if you don't have anybody close to you that has dealt with this, it's something I feel like most people can relate to and feel sorry for. So it's a story that I feel like is kind of hard to get wrong. So I can't really say that, oh, they wrote this really great emotional story. It's just they wrote a story that I think most people can easily sympathize with, as long as you don't do something incredibly unrealistically stupid with it. So with that in mind, looking at some of the flaws I have with this case, they feel like more so the issues that you need better writers on this show. Because with the whole thing with the therapist, Vic, who I know him as Ian Edgerton from Numbers, or I can't remember the name of his character on Psych, but he was like the beefcake FBI agent. It's like earlier seasons. It's kind of funny to see him going from that to this role. Two completely different characters. But anyway, he can't get up on stand because his superiors basically told him not to testify because they're worried about some sensitive information getting out. Here's my issue with that. It's very easy for them to step in and say, if he's going to testify, he cannot testify about this. That's very easy to do, I feel like. I'm pretty sure I've seen court cases before where a person is testifying, but the judge has been given specific orders to not allow the questions to deal with whatever, blah, blah, blah. So if they're just getting him up there to testify about Bly's PTSD, I feel like if the superiors are worried about what he might say, all they have to do is step in and say, hey, judge, he can testify about that. That is the extent to which he can talk about. If he gets asked any questions about what they're doing, some of their missions, all of that sensitive information, no, there are no questions about that. It cannot possibly veer into that scenario. And I feel like that's how it should have happened. I feel like that's a very easy solution to this issue. So the fact that it's just, no, he can't get up there, it feels more like a roadblock that the writers threw in the way to say, oh no, guys, now we can't do the PTSD defense. Well, okay, but your reasoning doesn't make sense as to why we're not allowed to use that anymore. So that, to me, I've said it before, I don't really know what it's called, but it's basically the opposite of a Deus Ex Machina, where something unrealistically stupid happens that kind of comes out of nowhere and shouldn't really be an issue, but the writers throw it in the way of the good guys to give them a reason to not instantly win the day. On top of that, everything to do with Chunk and his daughter is kind of stupid. It feels like unnecessary drama added in. The way Chunk and her are both acting is kind of immature on both of their parts. The fact that she figured out this whole thing about the affair and Danny didn't is so unrealistic to me. It feels like we needed to have some tension for Chunk in this episode, so let's have his daughter be involved, and let's have this whole stupid story where she's reporting on it, and then he subpoenas her as a witness, so now she has a gag order, and it's just, why? Why are we spending time on this? And at the end of this episode, you know they're going to make up. You know that they're going to get over this, so why are we spending time on this needless, pointless BS when we could be spending it elsewhere, developing this other story that did have a good finale, finding out about Bly's friend and what he was going through and what ultimately happened. I feel like that would have been much more interesting to focus on rather than, well, we got to have Chunk and his daughter fighting about something, because it feels like that's anytime she's involved, anytime she's in this show, it's always her and Chunk are fighting about something. That's typically whenever she's involved, that's the story, is they get into an argument, they get into a fight, and by the end of the episode, they typically make up or they're taking steps to making up. I'm sick of this story. Can we focus on something else with them? Maybe have an episode where they're not arguing, but they're both dealing with something together. I don't know. I guess that would be too difficult for these, baby writers that they have on the show to write. But anyways, outside of the main story, though, obviously you've got the whole thing with Marissa and this artist that she's interested in, and this just feels, I don't know, like they want to give Marissa somebody, so they threw him in out of absolutely nowhere. Even though apparently Marissa's been going to his gallery for seemingly a little while, we're just now hearing about this guy. And then of course there's legal issues to come up, and there's a guy, an asshole for them to take on, and it's putting them closer together. And I just feel like this is going to go nowhere. Like either she's going to end up dating him and maybe they'll end up together at the end of the series, or maybe they're not going to date. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, does it? I don't see this really amounting to much of anything other than, well, Marissa finally has a guy, and that's not really that important to me. Like, I know she's been through a lot and she's had her issues, but I'm not sitting here going, I can't wait to see more of Marissa and this guy together. It just felt like a needless distraction from, again, a story that did feel like it had the potential to be something a lot deeper. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of this episode felt kind of pointless outside of the stuff with Bly and his friend and what they were going through. I will say it maybe was a little predictable that in the end he wasn't going to be the one that killed him, only because they focused so much on this idea that they needed to defend him with the PTSD defense. To me, that kind of told me early on that it wasn't going to be that. I actually thought it was going to be somebody killed him. And seemingly there was something going on where the army people were not talking to Danny about it. They were trying to seemingly cover up something. I don't know if there was actually something to cover up, because at the end of it, it didn't end up being any of that stuff. Maybe they were just trying to cover up that his friend had PTSD as well. But I kind of thought maybe they were killing him to keep him quiet, and Bly took the fall because he was being forced to, or something along those lines. So to find out that it was actually he killed himself it's sad, but also I think it was a little less exciting than what my brain was cooking up about possible conspiracy, possible something happened that they both knew about, and his friend was being forced to take the fall. I don't know. It was one of those, I cooked up such a crazy scenario that got me excited that whenever I found out it was just his friend killed himself and he was covering that up because he didn't want people to find out that happened, I was like, okay, I mean, that's sad, and it's a good emotional moment between him and the wife at the end too, because her reaction I thought was exactly what I would expect. It was very realistic. Her realizing that this is what was going on and she didn't know about it. I think that's how most people would react realistically in this situation. So I thought that was very well handled. But again, my mind was thinking about all these possibilities of, is somebody framing Bly? Is somebody using him to have him fall on his own sword because there's a deeper conspiracy going on here? I don't know. I guess I shouldn't have expected that much from this show considering the past two, but I can't help it. My mind is very creative. It likes to come up with all these different exciting possibilities, even when I should be sitting here going, nope, this show is very simple and basic and it's not going to go that deep. But anyways, all that being said, that's it for this episode. On to the next one. I'll see you there. And now episode 14, Safe Space. So for this one, I mean, it's better. Again, it's okay. It's still not great. There's still issues with it. But I do think it's very telling that the better episodes recently have been the more episodic ones, the ones that have had a start and a finish in an episode and don't continue on a story. And I don't know why that could be. I mean, a few reasons that pop into my head is, one, maybe this team that they have writing is just better at writing very contained stories that start and finish in an episode. Maybe they're changing writers every episode, and so maybe one team writes, for instance, Marissa leaving TAC, they write that episode and then they're done, bring in a new team of writers, they write the next episode where she is now coming back to TAC the very next episode. I don't know, but definitely recently these past two have been more enjoyable, and I feel like the writing has been overall just better. It feels like I'm more invested because the stories are more interesting. So But yeah, the main case in this one I thought was fine. It was an interesting concept. This kid with agoraphobia has to try to find out if he can convict the man that he feels killed his aunt. They're looking into it. They're trying to get proof, but it's going to be difficult because he's not in court, and that's going to play against the jury. So yeah, I like that concept. I do feel like, again, it's very cookie cutter though. I would have liked if maybe the answer was not so straightforward, where, oh yeah, the guy, he was actually involved with their little scam too. Why couldn't it be that, yeah, it was the Russian mob that killed her? And yes, this guy was there, but he's not the one who did it. Honestly, it would have been even more interesting if we found out he tried to defend her from them, but of course he's being threatened too, so he can't just come out and say the Russian mob did it. I don't know. I feel like that would have been a more interesting resolution, and there was even a point where Bull said, we're not trying to win this case, this is about helping Sam. So why couldn't they just not win the case? Why could it be that this guy didn't kill her? He was involved. He was a part of the scam that got her killed, and he covered up a lot of that out of fear for his own life. But why did it have to be, nope, he killed her? Why did it have to be that? Like that, for me, it's less interesting when it is exactly how it appears to be. I just don't find it fun. I don't find it intriguing. It's, okay, so whatever happens or whatever is said at the beginning of the episode, that's how it is. You could have given me a little bit more. Yes, throwing in the scam and all of that the aunt was doing to try to help Sam, that did add a little level of intrigue, but I still felt like, well, they're introducing this about halfway through the episode, which tells me this guy is still guilty. This guy still killed her. Even if there's another reason for it, he's still responsible because we're finding this out halfway through. This is not something that's being thrown in near the end and they're like, holy crap, this is new information, and she was killed by somebody else. Like, I don't know. It just feels like there could have been something else there, and there still could have been the win for the team where they do help Sam. Not necessarily conquer his agoraphobia, but at least overcome it, kind of what we saw at the end where he was walking outside for a little bit and he's increasing the amount of time that he's outside. That could have been the win. It didn't also have to be, and this guy's guilty and we find him guilty and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's like I said, too simple, too easy, too cookie cutter. And because a lot of this season has been that, because there have been so many episodes where I feel like they could have done something to add a little bit more difficulty, a little bit more, I don't know exactly the word I'm looking for, but basically not make it so simple and straightforward, because that's not how life is. Again, when Bull does something to mess up the case, or he says something that messes up the case, instead of it just being, oh, but we still found a solution and we still won the day, instead of it being that, give me a reason to feel like, no, their actions have consequences. But every single episode, it's been that whatever they were hoping for, they managed to get that solution figured out. Even if there are problems, even if they do something to mess things up, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they're going to win. They're going to find the solution, and everybody's going to be perfectly fine because it's all hunky-dory. So yeah, just very frustrated by just how simple-minded the writers are for this show. But the other story is, of course, to do with Chunk. It's really weird that he's gotten now 2 stories in a row, because last episode he had the whole story with his daughter, and now this one he's got him and Rob, which I do find it a little... The biggest problem I had with this story, honestly, is the fact that they introduced this idea of the two of them getting together, and now all of a sudden we haven't heard, talked, nothing. We haven't seen him, and now apparently they're just staying over at each other's places. Like that just... I don't know. Just give a mention at some point. Have Chunk talk about the fact that, oh yeah, Rob and I went and got some drinks and things are going pretty well. Nothing, no mention of him. And then he just pops up and he just spent the night with Chunk. And I'm like, okay, so apparently this has been going on for a while and they've just not been talking about it because reasons. And it's something that if maybe they were seeing each other, but they weren't really talking about it with anybody else because they're, obviously rival lawyers and there might be conflicts of interest and all of that. I mean, even just the fact that they faced off against each other recently, I feel like that could have been your reasoning as to why we've not heard about it before now. But Taylor is like, oh yeah, because of Rob. Like, so she knows. So clearly Chunk has been talking about this, but just not in any of the previous episodes for some reason. It just felt kind of dumb to me. But no, this whole story with him and his mom, I mean, you know, at the end, she's going to be fine with it. You know, they're going to make up. They're going to, it's the similar thing that I talked about with his daughter last episode, where it feels like they are going to give him a problem. They're going to give him something that he feels like, oh, there's an issue here with my family. And then at the end of the episode, they're going to make up. They're going to be fine. It's all going to work out okay. That's exactly what happened. And I will say also, the conversation they had with Taylor about how his mom has always loved him and always treated him with respect and all of that stuff, and it doesn't feel like she looks down on him because of him being gay. What's weird to me is we had a very similar story last season, I think it was last season or the season before, when it came to his daughter and the fact that she was pregnant and she was thinking about getting an abortion. At the end of the episode, it didn't end with him going, okay, I'm fine with this now. He still wasn't fine with it, but he loved her because she's his daughter. I feel like him feeling this way about his mom, it kind of goes against that. Like, that should have been a lesson that he learned, where just because you don't necessarily agree with, you know, your child and what they're doing and all of that, and obviously, you know, oh, well, he didn't choose to be gay. I'm not saying that, but you don't have to necessarily agree with that. You don't have to sit there and go, okay, I'm perfectly fine with this, but she still clearly loves him because he's her son. And I feel like the fact that didn't really play, like that story that happened in the past didn't really play into this at all. It wasn't really discussed. I feel like that could have been a good talking point. I don't know. I feel like that was something that could have been referenced in the past, and something that could have been brought up to sort of counteract his way of thinking, where it's like, oh, she doesn't love me. It's like, no, she still does, clearly. And then again, she could have brought up the even further counterpoint, where it's not that I didn't accept that part of your life either. It's just I was worried about you. I think that would have made for a more interesting and more, I think, better written story, and showing that we're not just forgetting stuff that happened in the previous seasons, because sometimes I do feel like they do forget what happened in the past. But yeah, all in all, I mean, again, it's a good-ish episode. It's not phenomenal. It's not great, but it's better than some of the bad episodes that have been happening recently. So take for it what you will. It's better than the worst, but it's still not that great. But anyways, with all that being said, on to the final of these 3 episodes. I'll see you there. And finally, episode 15, With These Hands. Again, it's another fine episode-ish. There are still issues, but I feel like it's interesting that I've just now noticed this, because I feel like I should have realized this a couple episodes ago, but Bull and NCIS for me have the exact opposite issues. With NCIS, they're entering season 22 now, I think. So their episodic episodes have definitely gotten very bland and dull, because you run out of ideas of mysteries to tell after all of these seasons. Doesn't matter if you change up the team. At the end of the day, you're still writing mysteries for every episode. You're going to run out of creative ideas for that. But the running storylines typically have me the most interested, whether it's involved with the characters themselves, or whether it's you're telling a story, a mystery that's not going to end in one episode. It's going to take a few episodes. Either way, the running stories in NCIS have kept my interest throughout all these years, whereas the episodic ones have been very dull and bland and boring. With Bull, because we're only in season 6 now, the episodic stories have not quite hit their limits yet. You know, we still have new ideas for trials, new ideas for stories you can tell that go to trial and all of that. Whereas the running storylines are where I find myself losing interest this season. And what's funny is they've done running storylines in the past pretty well. Whatever reason, this season, the running storylines have either been ended way too quickly or are just really dull and really boring to me. So it's weird to me that these two shows have the exact opposite problem. But yeah, I mean, in this episode, the problem with it was the running story. Marissa and this Henri guy. I don't care about it. I don't. You've not given me a reason to care about this relationship. And so when you throw this whole problem in where Marissa has Taylor look him up and finds out, oh, he's married, and then they get into a fight over stuff, none of it's really that interesting. If I'm being honest, we just met Henri 2 episodes ago out of nowhere, even though Marissa apparently has known him for a little while now. And now all of a sudden there's like this deep emotional story involved where, oh my gosh, he's married, and oh, but the marriage is actually more so because his ex-wife was dealing with this. I don't even remember it was some terminal illness, I think, but they stayed married because financially it benefited her. All of this stuff, I don't care about any of it. I don't care about the fact that Marissa and Taylor got into a fight because Marissa asked Taylor to look into it. It's like, oh, but you thought that this was a bad idea, so I started to get worried because you gave me your insecurities or whatever. And it's just, I don't care. You're both kind of shallow for all of this. And honestly, I mean, I do agree with Henri. Her looking him up is kind of a shallow thing to do. And I get that it can be concerning getting out there and not knowing for sure if you can trust somebody. But that's where you have to go in and get to know them personally. Looking them up online is not getting to know them personally. That's getting to know their information. There's a lot of differences in that for sure. But I don't care about this though. I also don't even know why Marissa and Henri make a good couple to begin with. Because I like Marissa as a character, she's fine, but why do I care about Marissa and Henri together? Because again, we've seen them now for 2 episodes. First one, Henri got introduced as a possible love interest. In the second one now, they're together and they're splitting up in this episode, kind of. Obviously, they're going to work through it because, of course they are. They're not just going to introduce this guy as a love interest and then cut him off in the next episode. But why do they work together? Besides the fact that they both find each other incredibly attractive, why do they work together? Because that's not a good basis for a relationship. That is one of the things that you need. If you're not attracted to your partner, obviously there's an issue there. But that's not the only thing that you need. You need more to that to have a good relationship. And their mutual love for art is, again, only a small foundation piece. It should not be the whole relationship, because as soon as you get past that, you're not going to have much of anything. So they've not given me any reason to care about this relationship. So having a half of an episode dedicated to the struggles of that relationship, it's not going to work, and it's not going to keep me interested. And it did not keep me interested. So that was the problem I had with this one. Everything else to do with the case itself was okay. Maybe a little, again, too cookie cutter clean, because in the end, finding out that it's not actually her fault that somebody else did it, it's very reminiscent of a lot of the issues that I've seen in this show in particular, where it feels like maybe the person they're representing is responsible for it, but they're not a bad person. It was a mistake, or it was an accident, or blah, 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 something like that. But I feel like we just had the same thing. If you look at the episode 2 episodes ago, at the beginning of this review, we had a guy who we thought he was responsible for his friend's death because of a PTSD-induced blackout episode. But then it turns out it wasn't even him. His friend killed himself, and then he took the blame for it because he didn't want people to know what happened. Same thing here. We have a nurse who she thought she might be partially responsible because of her surgery, but not anything that she did wrong. It's just sometimes these things happen. And then we find out, no, it wasn't even the surgery that did it. It was this angel of mercy that stepped in, and she's the one that did it. Why do we have to keep doing this? Why do we have to keep taking these stories where maybe there is some responsibility there, maybe there is some cause, and we just have to try to see that there's a gray area in everything? Why do we have to keep erasing the gray area and say, no, it's black and white? This nurse isn't responsible. This one is a killer. She did it. It's black and white. Why do we have to take that gray area out? I get frustrated sometimes with the show when it does that, whenever there is that gray area. There is that, could you convict somebody in this scenario? Could you look at this nurse and say, hey, you're responsible for this? Could you do that whenever there are risks in every surgery? There's always a chance that something can go wrong. So could you, as a juror, step in there and say, she's responsible? And playing with the psychology of all of it, I feel like that is a very interesting concept. And I could be remembering wrong, but I feel like they did that a little bit better earlier on. Whereas now, especially in this season, there's been a lot of black and white where it seems like they're leaning toward the gray area of, can you convict this nurse for what she did? And then it turns into, nope, actually, she's not even responsible for it. This person is. This person actually killed the woman. And it takes that intrigue out of it. It takes that feeling of, we want to feel something. We want to get emotional and try to put ourselves in this scenario. And instead you just turn it into something that completely takes the responsibility out of it and the emotion out of it and just makes it it's a who done it and she did it. And it's just too easy. It's too easy. It's too simple. Yes, the concept of an angel of mercy, it is an interesting concept. It's an interesting concept in something like Criminal Minds or in a more murder mystery type of show. But the scenario is here that we're not always looking for a whodunit. We're not always looking for a criminal case. This was not a criminal case at the beginning and then it turned into one. I feel like that makes it a little bit less interesting when you look at what the theme of the show is. When you look at the fact that we're doing this in trial. We're doing this, we're trying to help these people by not necessarily solving crimes, but by looking at these scenarios that are real life scenarios that, again, gray area. Making it black and white, making it a whodunit murder mystery. Yes, there's the mystery intrigue, there's the mystery lover in me that finds that interesting, but that's not what I'm coming here for all the time. If you set it up that way at the beginning of the episode, then I'm fully engaged and I'm fully in mystery brain and trying to figure out who could have done it. But that's not what I came into this episode looking to do, if that makes sense. I came in here expecting, again, the whole idea of medical practice and the dangers of the medical practice. And you didn't give me that. You took all of that out, took all of the question out, and again, changed the story. And that's just, for me, I don't find that as interesting. So those are just my thoughts on it. A couple of things that did stand out to me that did work in this episode, though. I did like the tension between Bull and, I don't even remember his name now. I know him as one of the doctors, which is funny because I don't even really remember his doctor's name. But he was one of the new doctors that came in to work for House after the original 3 left. I remember him from that, so it's funny to see him being a lawyer in the medical field. There's something really ironic about that he played a doctor before and now he's playing a lawyer for doctors. But I like their tension, and I like the fact that he had just this view of this guy, which was not necessarily wrong. The guy was kind of a jerk to him. But then whenever he went into the courtroom, you could see the change in demeanor and how this was clearly his ball game. This was what he was meant to do, because as soon as he turned on the charm, jury loved him. So I did like some of their back and forth. I like the fact that Bull had to sort of make nice in the end, even though he was sort of right, but the guy was also had his points. It was just one of those, they're very clearly two personalities that don't really mesh. So they were both wrong in their own ways. And I like the fact that they sort of had to come together, because in the end, it comes down to they both care about helping people. They both care about getting the proper verdicts done. And so, to help Bull in this scenario, not necessarily because he likes Bull, but because he wants to find the truth here. I don't know. I liked how they handled that whole story. But that's about it for this one. It's 3 episodes that they're better than the last 3. I can't really say that they're great, though. It's just 3 bland episodes of a show that is kind of, like I said before, going out on a whimper. Like, this last season has just not been that good. The episodic stories have been okay. The running stories, the character-driven stories have just not really been that interesting. It feels like they don't really know what they want to do with some of these characters. And I don't know. I'm just worried that this show is going to come to an end and I'm going to forget that I even watched the show in about 5 years. And that's probably the worst thing that you could say about a show, is that it left no impact. But honestly, based on this last season, I'm feeling like it's going to have left no impact on me. So we'll see what happens next. That's it for me, though. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Bull reviews. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. And I will talk to you all later. Peace out.